Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It is me, the Mysterious Cameraman, and today we're going to be reviewing The Flash Season 4, Episode 1, Flashback. So this is a very different type of Flash review because this season only has 3 episodes and they're kind of spread out. So I kind of feel like it's more like a 3-part movie rather than Season 4. But I have a lot of thoughts on it, I'm going to be honest. I think this was definitely one of the most mixed feelings I've ever had for an episode. So we're going to be talking about that. Before we get into it, though, I have nothing to say besides from the fact that the Lost Man review, instead of coming out later tonight, it's going to come out tomorrow because I just couldn't get to reviewing this on Sunday, so everything's just going to be pushed back a day, and hopefully we'll get some videos I've been working on during the break, which is like towards late December. So let's talk about this episode. I went into it having the least knowledge going into a season because most seasons I am normally like reading almost pretty much every community post by Crimson Productions, and I rewatch the entire series. This time, since I've stepped away from the fan film community, not been as connected as I once was, I just haven't been reading every single post as much. So, for example, I have no clue what they're doing with their Marvel universe. I'm curious to know, but I have no clue. But with this, I knew a little bit going into it. I did the trailer review, I think, a little bit ago. But overall, I really didn't know much going into it besides from like what the trailer has told me. So seeing this was a very good surprise. I'll say once again, what I think was so much better was the production value. I'll say there was a lot of things that felt like season 3. I'm not going to deny that. A lot of the locations, the shots felt a lot like this what we were getting in season 3, but I don't think that's bad because this episode really does such a good job at telling a really good story about Cicada, about the Flash, and really setting you in this time period of going through the past few months of Barry and what position that's put him in. I think it's a very interesting thing, and I'm going to talk about the story because that's where a lot of my issues personally fall. But I think I do like, firstly, that Batman does go missing. I do hope he isn't dead, because if he's dead, that's really stupid, because I really hope we get like a Batman film or show at some point. But if we, like, I'll be honest, I'll be pissed if we don't. But I really, because that's also a pretty terrible way to kill Batman. But right now, I am very curious to see what they do with the next 2 episodes. But I'm going to talk about that later. Right now, I just want to talk about everything but story, which is challenging. I'll say the editing was also pretty good. I feel like the editing overall was much improved. I think there were some really cool things. They had one like weird animation. I was like, damn, that's like a kind of cool animation. And then it kind of like looked weird though, like because some of it was like a little bit like I didn't think it was all rendered because I feel like part of it was like invisible almost. Like it was weird. I'm very happy it didn't last any longer than it did. But overall, I am very much liking how their editing is definitely improving over the past few seasons of this show. One of the biggest things that I really do want to focus on though is pretty much how this. Okay, let's just talk about story. I feel like I just have to. I feel like everything just ties into it. I'll say this would be a very interesting pilot episode if it wasn't 33% this season. That's my biggest issue. The fact of the matter is, this is 33% of the season, 1/3 of the season already. And I feel like it rushed. I felt like this was 5 episodes or 4 episodes built into one. And I think the idea of the flashback is good. My issue with it is the fact that we never build Barry's pain, which is something very interesting. But I think if you were reading a story and you go from where we were in season 3 to season 4, and literally it goes right into this depression, and then we see him happy, and we see the depression forming. But the fact of the matter is, he doesn't start off at a point where he's losing things because we already know how it's going to end. We already know he's in that terrible state of mind. So I think what's so interesting is the fact that they don't build to it. They really just let him. They kind of cut off what makes it satisfying for when he's going to get better again. Because eventually, in the next 2 episodes, Barry's going to get back into a better mindset, I think. And when that happens, I don't think it's going to pay off much. Because he kind of took away all of the moments of breaking Barry down. So even just from a storytelling perspective, it isn't a smart way to tell a story because you're taking the character at their darkest moment. What some films or shows do is they take their darkest moment, And then it's not the entire episode. It's not weaved throughout the entire episode. It's a moment, and then they tell the story. And even if it's through episodes, and then once we build to it, we see what happened. The issue is the fact that it's telling so much because it's talking about all these different things. It's we're learning about Jay for the first time. There's like 3 fights with Cicada. There's so much going on that they're like jumping between it, so we don't see those moments. Like it feels like they took all the big moments from 4 episodes, put them in one, and said, there is your arc of how he becomes depressed. That's not how it works. Because at this point, we haven't learned any, like, we know what happened to Barry. Yes, we do. The issue is the fact that we just kind of jumped right into his, I don't even know how, like, I remember what I'm trying to say, but, like, it would go from, like, Oliver being mad at him to if I was Cicada, and then they'd be like, and then Caitlin died. But we still don't know anything about Caitlin. And then there was, like, that fight, and then there was another fight, and it just kept jumping around, but it never had those moments between characters. I think there was only, like, 1 or 2 times when you had, like, a deep moment between the characters to build those characters up. And the issue is the fact that it was doing so much, the fact that it didn't feel earned. So we saw his depression becoming worse, but it didn't feel earned because we kind of just jumped right to it. We were jumping between so many things. So we didn't see the gradual progression of him getting worse and worse and worse until there wasn't anything left to take. And that's the moment he's at now, but it's not earned. Like we see him getting worse, but we don't see enough. Like we needed more time than this. And I'll say, I think a huge issue with that is the fact that this episode really had to be combined with so many. Because this originally was 10 episodes, they combined it into 3. And I think it was due to casting things and things like that. From what I remember, I think there was a few cast members that quit, a few things that had to be changed. And 10 episodes, I guess, was too ambitious. But my issue is the fact that they took this really, really good thing and they just, like, I don't know, but, like, it just felt like it fell apart almost. Like they had so much good things to work with and then they mushed it together and took out, I feel like, some of those moments to build the characters. Like I feel like sometimes the pacing wasn't as good in seasons 2 and 3, but at least in those episodes we were getting moments to build Barry's character. I feel like here we really just jumped to the good stuff, which I enjoy, but you also need those moments because now it just felt like the pacing was off a bit and it didn't. By the end of it, I felt a little bit sympathetic for Barry, but not nearly enough because this is supposed to be Barry's like depression season, which is good. And the issue is the fact that when a show does like a 3 episode arc, they need to do it right. And what I mean by that is they have to break down the character like gradually, kind of what they do in Armageddon, because I think Armageddon's so brilliant. But kind of what Armageddon does, it does it slowly. But in 1 episode, we see all that go down. We don't take him from that moment and take all the good stuff. We take a small event and like a series of just these small events just keep hitting at Barry because it makes sense. Hear him reflecting on his pain might make sense, but we're not seeing him break down. We're seeing the moments that break him down, but we're not seeing those moments where he starts to crumble. We're not seeing him like that happen. I think in episode 2 is when we'll get more of that. However, that isn't how you tell. Like, I get that it's like, okay, once we get to episode 2, it might be better, but that doesn't make this episode better. I think this episode is so good, but it combines so much good that it doesn't give what the series really needs. Because if this was 5 episodes and they broke this up into 2 episodes even and added a few moments for these characters, it would already be so much better. Because I want to just say, I love this episode. My issue is the fact that I wanted to feel so much for Barry's situation, and I just don't. And that isn't how it should be. And that's a huge thing that I really think about when I'm watching this film. I'm like, I feel like I should care more for Barry, especially after coming off the last time we saw him. I'm not counting Deja Vu. The last time we saw Barry was when he found out he was going to die in a year. And it's just such an interesting way to do this story. And I just don't feel like it worked as well as they thought it was going to work. Or maybe they just didn't see that that was not going to be visible to the audience with that depression storyline. So I am sorry I focused a lot on that. I am like an author. Like this is like what I think about when I'm writing. So it's like I don't know. It just like really, it got to me when I was like, I really want to care for this character, and I just don't. And that was the biggest thing that got me with this episode. But really, besides from that, like I have to say, besides from that, this was the best episode they've ever done. I say there were some creative choices I wasn't the hugest fan of. I will say the rock music just didn't work for me. I get what, like I get if you like rock, like cool for you. For me, having Cicada's first scene to be to rock music just degrades his character a bit because it's not epic. I'll say like Cicada's first moment needs to be epic because you need to be afraid of him. What makes you afraid of Cicada, which it's done very brilliantly, is the kidnapping of Batman. But besides from that, you don't. He isn't a very threatening villain. He kidnaps Batman, and that's the biggest thing he does the entire time. Like when you think about villains like Zoom or Savitar, you think about their like even their music is just so intimidating, and I really wished we got that more for Cicada. And I'm excited to see how they do Cicada because if you don't know, I love him so much as a character. But what I worry about is the fact that they're not going to execute it where it's Cicada really doing this for his daughter. He has lines. He should have lines. He should have some of that. But like he should be a really good villain, and I'm very excited to see how they execute him throughout the season. Right now, though, for me, he just isn't as he isn't he's working for me. I'll say he's working for me, just not as much as I'd like. So I'm very excited to see how they do him over the next couple of episodes. But I think he is such a good villain. I'm very excited to see what they do with him because he really does have such a potential to be a really threatening villain. Um, I'll say let's just talk about acting for a second. Oh my god, the performances in this. I'll say I love some of the lore produced. I love the idea of like the swords having like historical value. Same with there's a few swords. There was like the sword and the knife have like historical things. There was a lot of things I just really enjoyed about this episode, and there were some of those shots also just were done so well. I'll say Liam had one of the best performances he's ever brought. I think I will say though, even though he was good, I don't. I also think it's because I'm coming off of Nudes on Fades, where he was the main character. I don't think Arrow was as good as he was in some of the last things I've seen him in. I think the other thing is I think a lot of these actors work really well in those like high tense finale situations, and this just wasn't one of those. That's not an issue, but I'm very excited to see them when the stakes really get risen in the third episode. I did like the new Batman suit. I just didn't love it. I'm still suspicious of oh my god, the guy in the chair. I'm still suspicious of him. Like I still think him and Arrow are the same guy because the wig just doesn't look right and they look really similar. So I don't know what it is. I feel like they're the same guy. But I've been saying this for like at least a year at this point. I really wish I was proven wrong at this point. But no, Liam's never commented and been like, nope, they're different people. But I really think they are. And even if he commented, I probably wouldn't believe it. But I think it's just a lot of the actors that made season 3 so good. I feel this episode was good, and yet I feel like they could have done more. I don't know how to explain it, but like the biggest thing was with Caitlyn. That was the one thing I really want to focus on here. They spoke about Caitlyn so much. I want to have an emotional tie to that character, so that when they're like, she died, she died. We get she died, but like, why does that matter? Because Caitlyn was a big part of the first episode of the entire show. So I feel like it's a very interesting thing for him to expect us to care for that character after so long. So that's like a big thing for me. I just don't get why that was a choice made. But I'm very excited to see the Killer Frost arc. I just wish I cared more for Caitlyn going into it. Besides from that, I just kind of want to get into the 6 points. I'll say, just this episode really did blow me away. I think every scene was good. I'll say, I don't think there was one scene that dragged. Every single scene was interesting. I loved when he was losing his powers. I think that was so good. I'll say the one thing that just didn't work is the fact that it wasn't structured. It didn't have those moments that this episode of depression needed. Like if they're doing a depression episode, you need to have the moments. And this just didn't have that. And that's my biggest issue with what this episode tried to do. But overall, I still loved every moment of the episode. I just think once you look back on it, it's like maybe they should have done this, but there was not a single bad scene in this episode. I loved everything. I think, as I said, there were a few creative choices I didn't love. I get why they changed the costume, but I just don't love whenever any shows do like that homemade look. I just don't love it. But I really enjoy what this episode did. I'm gonna be honest. This was so good. I'm very excited to see what they do with the next two parts. And I really hope that this doesn't flop. Because if this isn't a good finale like thing for the Flash, they need to do a season 5 before Crisis. Because this is if it's bad, this can't be the send off. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And I'll see you guys with the next review. Bye guys.